The following is a presentation from the Greece Historical Society. The second Tuesdays of the month programs from the Greece Historical Society are sponsored by members of the Greece Historical Society and by the sponsors of advertisements in the newsletter. Space for the second Tuesdays of the month programs is provided by the Greece Public Library. Fun in the Sun, Adventures in Outdoor Play, presented by Christopher Bensch. Recorded Tuesday, January 10th, 2023.
I was going to introduce our speaker tonight, but we have a special guest to introduce our speaker, Mr. Don Riley. If you don't know Don was town supervisor for 17 years in what he calls the golden years of the town of Greece. Don?
Thank you, Bill. Thank you very, very much. Good evening. What a beautiful library. Just beautiful. I mean, and what a lovely setting. You may have been to other events like Bill and the Historical Society have sponsored, but you're in for a real treat. Tonight you're going to be hearing from the gentleman with his colleagues who literally took a dusty old history museum, Stong Museum, which was beloved but dusty and old, and turned it into a world-class history with an academic bent to study play in all its elements. So for over 30 years, and by the way, Reeve and I, my wife Reeve is with me tonight, we're coming to hear Chris anyway, but I was talking to Bill and I said, just let me give Chris a little launch here, because no one in the Stong Museum entity has had more to do with the development structure academically, from a curatorial point of view, to a collections point of view, to create the greatest collection of toys and remnants associated with play in the whole world than Chris Bensch. We're going to be hearing from Chris tonight. Chris is a history major out of college, which I really think is cool, right? Ask me what my degree is in, Chris. Yeah, history. But he also, with his colleagues, and it's a very small group, Stong Museum, if you haven't been there, shame on you, but come on, get up there. It's for everyone. It's for all ages. And when I go through the museum and I see toys associated with me as a kid, it just brings it right back. That's sort of what we certainly want to titillate, but we also have the largest collection of not only dolls, but Barbie dolls. We have the largest collection, and on and on and on. Anything associated with play. Mrs. Strong, in her wonderful challenge to build, in her will to Stong Museum, and she left a portion of it, her dedication was to a museum of fascination. It's right in her will. And I think she'd be thrilled beyond belief that we've taken her concept of fascination to brand new heights. Without going on much further, I do want to do a little commercial, though. We're in a capital fundraising campaign. We're raising $65 million to expand the museum, over 100,000 square feet. When I joined, joined as a trustee about the same time Chris was coming to the museum in 1989. Been a trustee ever since. Thrilled, it's the joy of my life. We were attracting about 90,000 people a year. And that's a lot of people, isn't it? Currently, we're attracting 600,000. The new museum, the new expansion, will allow us to attract upwards of 1 million, and that puts us in the 1% of museums in the whole country. It's fitting that Greece, as a leader in most everything, sees fit to bring a leader in another area to talk to our historical society. So without further ado, my colleague, the Vice President of Collections and Curatorial Services, Chris Bensch.
Wow, that's a tough act to follow. I hope I'm up to that. Well, it's a thrill being with you tonight, and I hope that I can prompt some of what Don was talking about. One of my favorite things to hear as I pass around the museum is people of every age, from 8 to 88, saying, I had one of those. And you can tell that they are absolutely powered back in time by something that is sending them time traveling. Or sometimes they also say, Mom, you never let me have one of those. So there's a number of stories associated with that. And tonight, my opportunity is to talk to you about what I call fun in the sun, outdoor play. And I hope that I can power some memories of your own tonight and to think about the ways that we in our past have played and some of those ways of play that continue on into the present. And some that maybe should get picked up again in our highly interactive electronic age. So let's see. Play today, speaking of electronics. Now, I don't mean to run down electronic play in any way. At the Stong Museum, we are not only have the most toys, dolls, board games, we also have the most video games of any place in the world, more than 50,000 of them. And that's a key part of how people play. So whether you play solitaire on your computer, or Words with Friends on your phone, or any of the other ways that we all play electronically, it's certainly part of our play sort of portfolio today. And on the left-hand side of the screen is an Atari 2600 video game system. It is in our National Toy Hall of Fame for its place in introducing people to playing on their television sets. It wasn't the first system of its kind, it wasn't even the best, but it was the one that came with Pong, the game that everybody wanted to play, and sold a gajillion copies and really opened the door to electronic play. But what I want us to think about is a lot of analog ways of playing. And today, play is also something that is very structured in many cases. So, sports leagues. This is not kids saying, oh, Susie and Joe next door, let's go play a game of baseball. It's organized leagues with parents running it, and rules, and structure, and travel games, all of that. There's a sense of nervousness about safety in a number of ways, deservedly in some cases, but I traveled many, many miles on my bike in my younger years with nothing on my head except my hair, and I took a few tumbles. I am still with you all today. So we often put a lot of structures around play that maybe it doesn't deserve, or maybe it takes away from the playfulness. So I want to think about some of the ways that play occurred in the past. So here are just some examples of things that would probably not get by a liability lawyer today. So there's the classic daisy air rifle, you'll put your eye out kind of phrase. I know that I have a few scars on my hands from playing with sparklers, let alone firecrackers over the years. And then the other part of play, the play that kids create. Not that they buy something or have something purchased for them, but they find a perfect V-shaped stick that turns into a slingshot. It's that kind of ingenuity, that's inventiveness, that play happens no matter what. So let's talk about play in our backyards, or in that park, or in that next door neighbor's yard, all the ways. I'm going to talk about a number of dimensions of that. So here we see one of the classic backyard playthings, the sandbox. I know I had one of those growing up, and just last year we inducted sand into the National Toy Hall of Fame. It was one of our periodic curveballs that we throw into that annual announcement, and I took a little grief from especially a couple sports DJs who were raking me over the coals about sand getting into the National Toy Hall of Fame. And they said to me, we think toys in the Hall of Fame should be ones that you are thrilled to get if it's underneath the Christmas tree. I said, if you got a sandbox for Christmas and no sand, you would be really bummed out. And they said, oh, maybe you have a point. So sand and sandboxes is such a wonderful open-ended plaything. It can be construction, it can be pads, it can be imaginary play of so many natures. And whether it's a really nice sandbox there on the left with a roof to create a little shade maybe, or something even simpler on the right-hand side of the screen. Or another toy that is in the National Toy Hall of Fame, the swing. Now, Tarzan didn't actually swing on a swing, but he swung, didn't he? And swings and the pleasure of swinging is something that has been around for centuries, if not thousands of years. It is as high as many of us got as kids before we took airline flights. It is something that teaches you physics when you fly off the swing and it comes back and clonks you in the back of the head. It is a learning experience as well as a playing experience, and definitely a worthy part of the backyard environment. Also slides. We don't have many slides in the Strong's collection because they take up a bunch of space and they tend to not be thought of as something that a museum would want. But the oldest slide that we have is a wooden slide with wooden slats. And it was given by a woman who had actually used it as a little girl. And I asked her, in a polite way, I said, did you get splinters in your fanny as you slid down a wooden slide? She said no, but because it had slats, she would get pinched at the bottom when those boards came a little close together. So sliding, again, that sense of exhilaration and speed is one that is very key to play in so many ways. Seesaws, teeter-totters. There's another physics experiment with people. I know my younger sister and I love to explore equilibrium with a seesaw, and our goal was to just counterbalance each other enough that you could almost touch, but not quite, and then go back and forth without ever touching the ground. It was hours of fun. And I have to say, in our slightly older high school years, we were still having fun on a seesaw at a campground we were staying at, and we broke it in two. So we were a little more than the weight limit, obviously, but there you see whole crowds of little girls on seesaws there at the lower right in a stereo view car. Imaginative play is something I spent endless hours doing in my backyard, in my neighborhood, with friends. And here you see a couple girls in this stereo view again. This is titled Hard at Play, and they are playing with some little buggies. There's a doll over there at the far right, and they are engaged in making up a story. They are creating a world of their own narrative. That is something that doesn't necessarily happen in our highly programmed play for kids today. They are just taking off with the resources that they have around them. One of the imaginative sorts of play that bridges generations across time is playing house. Kids often want to do the things that grown-ups do. We as grown-ups know that it's not so much fun to do laundry. The little girl on the right, though, is having a great time boiling her wash in that make-believe wash setup. And on the right-hand side are kids doing that classic kid imaginative play, having tea. Now, where do kids get that? Most grown-ups don't go to tea parties. There is no such thing, but generations after generations of kids teach that to one another. So with your stuffed animals, with your dolls, with your friends, playing tea and house are things that are, again, classic ways of engaging, often outside. Playing cowboy. In the 1950s and 60s, the most popular shows on television were almost exclusively westerns, And they ran for decades in some cases. And here you see a couple lucky boys who have really good cowboy equipment. That little boy on the left has quite an elaborate cowboy outfit, as well as his rocking horse there, and he is perfectly kitted out. This lucky boy and his dog can do a sleepover in their Roy Rogers branded tent, and they can enjoy a little Western outdoor atmosphere in that way. Or maybe you want to go a little further back in history, maybe to the Knights of the Round Table. Here's a young man who has a sword, and maybe that's a milk carton or something turned into his helmet there, a tunic, and he is engaged again in an imaginative play, pretending he is a knight out on a quest. And another inductee into the National Toy Hall of Fame, the Stick. In 2007, we inducted the Stick into the National Toy Hall of Fame, and comedian Stephen Colbert took me personally to task, saying on his program that Mr. Bensch has ruined the toy industry this holiday season because grown-ups everywhere are going to go out in the backyard or the park and pick up a stick for that child rather than paying good money for a manufactured toy. On the principle that almost any publicity is good publicity, we challenged Stephen Colbert to have me on the show and have a stick duel. He was not man enough to take me up on that challenge. He knows how threatening I look, and I still consider that a win because he would not even try to take me on. So the stick in the far left is just a branch from the backyard, but sticks can take all sorts of other forms in kids' mind. The one at the lower right, that is a donated stick to the museum. It is a stick with a little duct tape around the handle, turning it into a sword or a lightsaber, and it came from a dad who had put it away in the attic and was waiting until his son came home from college for the holidays because he wanted his permission in order to give this significant stick to the Strong Museum. So this is an actual play-tested stick, as is that little one at the top. I found that sitting on the coffee table of a B&B I stayed at in Illinois. And I said to my hostess, "Wow, that's great. That stick looks exactly like a pistol." She said, "Yes, my grandson spotted that in the church parking lot. He brought it home." I said, "Well, that's the kind of play we want to represent. That's the kind of thing that's hard to find at an antique shop or on eBay." She says, "Go ahead and take it. He can find another stick." So what I hadn't thought about was this was a trip where I only had carry-on luggage that I was flying with. And as I got to the airport, I thought, what do I do? My bag is going through. Do I say to the TSA agent, "Oh, be on the lookout for that stick shaped like a pistol"? Does that only raise more red flags? Will I be carried away in handcuffs? So I watched as my bag went into the x-ray machine and stopped, and ran back out and stopped, and ran back in and stopped. And I thought, is this when I speak up? I thought, no, I'm only going to make things worse. It went through. I flew with my stick pistol. I don't know whether to be reassured or horrified that I got to do that, but it is now part of the Strong Museum's collection, and that little boy in central Illinois got a cover story on his small town newspaper that his stick had gone to the Strong Museum in Rochester, New York, and a few years later he came with his family to see it on display. So that was a wonderful story, and the power of sticks. And sticks are great. Sticks can be a fishing line, a fishing pole, like that little boy on the left, or sticks are a cross-species plaything. Dogs know that sticks are toys as well. So here is a lovely snapshot, carefully captioned at the bottom, Mildred and Dog. So I'm sorry that the dog didn't get the first name in there. And even before we inducted sticks into the National Toy Hall of Fame, we inducted the cardboard box in 2005. Now, we thought that was a great idea. We got wonderful press about it. And I was okay with it until the year right after that, and we went to Toy Fair, the big trade show that happens in New York City every year at the Javits Convention Center. And here I was, all these people who make their livelihood of manufacturing and marketing toys and selling them to millions of people. And I thought, they are going to hate us that we're promoting the cardboard box. But what happened was all these people at this big trade show came up to me and said, I remember when the neighbors got a side-by-side refrigerator. It was the biggest box we had ever seen. It was a castle. It was Little House on the Prairie. It was a spaceship. You name it. They had the same happy box memories that so many of us have, and none of them said anything bad about me or the museum inducting the cardboard box into the Hall of Fame. So there you see some kids on the left playing with a box. There's somebody in the box at the back there. They're perfect for puppet shows or other kinds of entertainment. And I got this snapshot more recently from grandparents who had bought a side table from Pottery Barn, and the kids loved this box so much that they insisted that their parents strap it onto the roof of the minivan so they could take it home after they visited Grandma and Grandpa, because this was such a powerful imaginary plaything for them. I didn't live anywhere near the coast growing up in central Ohio in my childhood, so what we did, because we didn't belong to the neighborhood pool, we played in the sprinkler on our lawn, and coincidentally the grass got watered along the way. So here's imaginary play, fun of leaping through a sprinkler, something that isn't so much a part of childhoods today necessarily. Backyard games are also part of the outdoor landscape. Croquet is perhaps one of the best known. It was famous in the 19th century as being a way that men and women could play together. It isn't reliant on strength. It is skill and strategy. And I have to say there's something a little risque about an attractive woman putting her foot on two balls and whacking them that was added a little extra zing to the game. And here's a young man who is obviously very serious about his croquet. Badminton, another sort of low-threshold outdoor sport. Even if you don't have a net, with a couple badminton rackets and a birdie, you can play over a clothesline or a fence or whatever. So it's something that is very adaptable. And I am a personal survivor of playing jarts, lawn darts, in my childhood. Maybe you've played them, maybe you haven't. Sort of a variation of horseshoes if you haven't played them. There are rings on either side of a space, and you lob these weighted darts that are about yay long, fairly substantial points on them to dig into the lawn, and it's a great target game. What I learned as a kid was, don't take your eyes off Mom, because my mother had a really erratic throw. It could go to the other end of the yard, or it could go straight up and maybe come right down through the center of your skull. And I am here to say I have no puncture wounds. It taught me attention. It taught me to dodge. It was an educational learning play experience. Since then, jarts have been taken off the market as being unsafe. They have returned in this weighted version, which I contend could still clobber you quite nicely. It might not pierce you, but it could bludgeon you. So you dodge one danger and you confront another. And speaking of dangerous fun, here's a young man who is using firecrackers in a little toy cannon. And his sister, probably there, is ready for the big bang. And playing with fire, literally, is part of backyard kid play. I worked with a guy who told about his burn barrel in his rural area, and he and his friends got the great idea of filling up Ziploc bags with gasoline and lobbing them into the burn barrel, which produced some lovely fireballs, including one that set the garage roof on fire, so that was the end of that game. But play in dangerous ways and risky ones is, again, part of many childhoods in the past that maybe has been engineered out of childhood for some better and some worse today. Kites, another toy that is in the National Toy Hall of Fame. Kites have been around for probably 3,000 to 4,000 years, originating in India and Southeast Asia. And on the left-hand side is what's called a trade card, a little advertising card about the size of a postcard for Clark's thread, when people still did home sewing and stitching and darning of socks, and they were contending that their thread is so strong that it can be the string for your kite there. Kites aren't very expensive, they don't require a lot of equipment. Again, they can send you imaginatively soaring into the air with a good stiff breeze and no electric wires nearby. Or for another low-price outdoor plaything, how about a balsa wood airplane like these? 5 cents. Can you buy anything for 5 cents these days? And this was a display pack that would have been on a toy or a 5 and dime store counter promoting these 9-inch, wing planes that fly over 100 feet, according to the box. But airplanes can get more complicated for outdoor use. Here's a very brainiac-looking guy with a much more complicated plane that he is obviously quite proud of his construction. And then there's neighborhood play. I consider myself fortunate to have grown up in a neighborhood in the baby boom years where if you stepped out your front door, chances are there was somebody else out there and you could play something or other, whether it was hide and go seek or kick the can or something. There were playmates around just to be had. There were no official play dates or parents didn't have to intervene. I went out of the house on a Saturday afternoon, and as long as I returned for dinner, I was okay. Whether that was on my bicycle or on my feet, I didn't get into very much mischief, but it was a different time and place. And so here you see kids who are engaged in playing in this stereo view, Blind Man's Buff. And a little more ambitiously, here's play in a vacant lot, probably in the early part of the 20th century in this photograph. Take a look at what's going on here. These kids have essentially created a trench. I don't know whether this is the era of World War I and trench warfare. They have taken this vacant lot and they've dug quite a hole here. And what they're holding isn't toy shovels and pickaxes. It's grown-up stuff. And they've got a U.S. flag there, and they are really going to town with their imaginative play out in this kind of literal no man's land. Somebody didn't own it. Somebody didn't say, you kids, you're making too much mess in the dirt. This was fair game to have this kind of territory to play in and imagine. Another part of play, especially in more rural areas, exploring nature. This one is titled Chasing Butterflies in the Daisy Field and exploring the wonders of nature, whether that's frying ants under a magnifying glass or sticks down a stream and discovering fluid dynamics, or whether it's capturing lightning bugs at night. Those kinds of playful activities that help you understand the world around you and appreciate the world around you are key parts of outdoor play. And one of the reasons that right down to the present, the Stong Museum has its butterfly garden as a way of demonstrating that exploring nature, and even in that limited space that we offer you, is a way of playing. Sidewalks are also a play space through much of the first part of the 20th century the late 19th century. Here you see a little girl with a jump rope, another toy that's in the Hall of Fame. Jump ropes, if you weren't aware, originally were a toy that was exclusively for boys when they were introduced to North America by settlers to New Amsterdam, which was what we call New York. And it is a plaything that has gone a 180-degree gender reversal when we mostly think about girls playing jump rope as opposed to boys. Here's a young man who is maneuvering his wheeled train locomotive there out onto the sidewalk and is ready to set out for adventure there, because that was part of the play landscape for kids. Out there on vacant lots or on streets, there are competitive games like stickball that can be played with sort of free-form rules as necessary, dependent on the number of people you have playing and the size of the space that you have, whose windows you have broken most recently and need to stay away from. Or baseball, which you'll notice here is happening right in the middle of the street. I don't know whether that is the batting line up there along the curb or whether that's the onlookers. And because of those restrictions on space in suburban lots, too many windows broken, a family in Connecticut invented the wiffle ball, designed to be a ball that you could throw accurately. You could get a curve onto it. It was originally based on leftover plastic from a nearby cosmetics factory, and they found that if you had pierced holes in just one hemisphere of the ball, that let you have great amount of control. You could throw it, lob it, hit it, and again, it wouldn't break the neighbor's windows. It's still made in the US down to today, and one of the joys of the National Toy Hall of Fame is that members of the Mulaney family who created it and still own the company were able to be with us when their toy was inducted into the Hall of Fame. Marbles. Now, I know when I was in about 5th grade, there was a marble craze in my elementary school. And I was out there shooting marbles, puries, and cat's eyes, and boulders, and all the other styles and sizes of marbles. It was a real competitive game for many years, and parents thought it was rather disreputable. It was essentially gambling, because if you won the game, you took my marbles. I'm going to take my marbles and go home. And there's guys on a tenement rooftop who are shooting toward their marbles toward a series of circles there to get them into the target while the laundry dries behind them on the line. And marbles was something that was almost exclusively a boys' activity. So here you see a clothing ad advertising that it's good enough for Sunday best or also for Saturday play with your marbles. And Ben Sklar here on the right-hand side is the marble king for his shooting skills. I don't think he necessarily wore that crown much of the time. For girls, the competitive game was likely jacks. This is, again, in the National Toy Hall of Fame, as marbles are, and jacks go back thousands of years, as do marbles. Not in their current plastic version or even the metal version that was typical of my childhood, but early jack games were played with things like animal vertebrae, that you still had a pickup game and you were gathering those up in a successive fashion, as is part of jacks. My sister had metal jacks. I had lots of friction toy cars that I crawled around on my hands and knees maneuvering them. There's nothing quite gets your attention so much as kneeling on a metal jack as you're maneuvering your car around the living room carpet. It definitely spikes up your day. Roller skates. Roller skates are a great plaything that, again, in the National Toy Hall of Fame. And here you see some earlier designs and a young lady whose roller skates are important enough to her that she wants her formal portrait there on her skates. This is the kind that I grew up with, that you clamped onto your shoes, had to wear, in my case, my slightly outgrown dress shoes because it wouldn't clamp onto my sneakers very well. And in a neighborhood that not all the sidewalks were even, there was something especially distressing about hitting one of those little rises and having your skate rip off of your foot and you going sprawling and skinning your knees. And if you had a key like that, you might put it on a string around your neck so that you could adjust this hold of your skates onto your shoes. Wagons are also something that has been around for quite a while. They are a classic kids' plaything. These are two named after airplane hero Lindbergh, Charles Lindbergh. So there's a wooden Lindy Flyer at the upper left and a very fancy metal Lindy Flyer with a headlight on it as well and a bumper out there. Because one of the great things about wagons is, as a little kid, you get towed around in them. But when you become a little bigger, you flip that handle back toward you, you put one knee in the wagon, and you've basically got a super-duper scooter. And as a grown-up, maybe you use that same wagon to haul mulch around to your garden. So wagons are a gift that keeps on giving, and they are very durable. And for a while, the Radio Flyer Company, for whom who got into their wagon brand into the National Toy Hall of Fame, were known as basically the Detroit of the wagon business because they used so much steel in producing their very sturdy, durable wagons. And here you see kids in a variety of different wagons. Here they are racing down a hill with that tiller basically pulled back toward them like a steering wheel, and a more free-form wagon, a little less formal on the left-hand side with a couple little boys with their sun hats on. Growing up, my grandmother told me stories about what I thought she was calling her go-kart. No, she actually had a goat cart like this one, which was pulled by a goat. So this one is in 1931, a little after my grandmother's era. She was probably in her goat cart about the turn of the 20th century. Scooters are back in a big way, even if they're not electrified, as many of them are today. In a lot of big cities, you can rent them with a credit card and zoom around town. And here's some scooters from the 1930s and 40s. That's a very Art Deco looking one on the left-hand side. And from the 1940s, a jigsaw puzzle ad for Kellogg's with a boy racing along on his scooter with his dog alongside. Couple different styles of scooters. Here's a little boy who's on one that's kind of a scoot-along scooter. That's Jerome, 2 years old, on the, according to the caption below. And quite a sizable scooter here, done with a board. Kind of a very homemade version. And in fact, one of the things I'm continuing to look for the Strong Museum's collection are those homemade vehicles. So here's a couple kids who have one of the things I would love to get, which is a scooter or a car or a pedal device. This is made out of peach crates. In fact, it's actually pears. It says upside down on that crate. These are the ways that you repurpose things around your house with some found wheels, maybe from a baby buggy, some scrap wood. It's not something that necessarily got put away and saved for the grandkids, or someday we'll sell it on eBay. It was something they got made and used up and enjoyed. Maybe it went onto the bonfire. I still hope that someday I'm going to walk into a barn or a garage and find one of these for the museum's collection. More formally, soapbox derby racers. So here's a young man whose head is seemingly sprouting out of his soapbox derby style racer. And speaking of dangerous activities, nothing could quite top The thrill and the danger of being on a high-wheeled bicycle, such as this one. They're sometimes known as penny farthings because the relationship of the two wheels is the same as an English penny to a farthing coin. They were highly dangerous. You were basically balanced up on top of that. They had no springs. They would probably shake your fillings right out. And the other part is that with direct drive, this is like a tricycle, essentially. The faster you go, the faster those pedals turn. So if you're going down the hill, those pedals are going like 60, and they could break your ankles if you weren't careful. So it was a huge step forward in the 1880s and 90s when the safety bicycle, as it was called, came into play. With two equal-sized wheels, you could actually sit on the seat and touch the ground. It had a chain so that it powered your wheels, not direct drive. And they were something that there was just absolute mania for bicycles. They were everywhere. It became an incredible boom. And it was something that women loved because it got them out from parents, from chaperones, from prying eyes. And for the first time, they could get away and have a sense of independence. And here you see a woman on the right-hand side with her bicycle, and you probably can't quite make it out from where you're sitting, but there is something called a skirt guard, which is made of taut wires or strings that protected her skirt from getting sucked into that back wheel. And in fact, we have one with a very similar skirt guard on display on the museum's second floor right now. Here's the kind of bicycle I grew up with in the 1950s and 60s. This is a Huffy bicycle with a headlamp. When I have to move these around the museum, they seem to weigh about as much as my car because they are made out of, I think, cast iron as opposed to something lighter and extruded out of exotic metals like bicycles today. Here's a Schwinn Typhoon. Or from the late 60s into the 70s, the banana seat bicycle. This one with a shifter that is just like on your Mustang sports car. This is a Schwinn Orange Crate. And remember, that's crate with a K. That was their trademark. With those little wheels and those high bars, sort of like Easy Rider. For the younger set, there's tricycles. And I am especially fond of that really sort of spacey looking one at the upper left. It is kind of Art Deco, kind of ultra atomic era with the color and that strange circular steering device. And speaking of safety, the steps on the back of this tricycle are not made for you to climb up onto the seat. That's for your younger brother and sister to cling to you behind as you go down the sidewalk. If you want to imagine play on the water and you've got a little body of water, a pond, a pool, a reflecting space in a city park, there are toy boats that will let you get out and adrift on the waves. Or maybe you want to get into the waves yourself and go to the beach. Here you see people in probably a little before or after 1900. You notice to our way of thinking, they are very properly dressed. They are wearing more than many of us do going out to WAGONS today, from the collar to their knees or below, which would be awfully heavy once it got soggy, because these were wool or cotton, and they got waterlogged. At the beach, there are classic things to do, like make sand castles and read and watch the other people, watch the waves, dodge the seagulls, all of those, that kind of outdoor play. Or maybe you just ogle the good-looking lady who you are hoisting over the waves. And she is very racily dressed with her skirt up of her knees there. And romance at the beach. Here you see young women spying on their chum who is with her beau, behind this beach chair, enjoying a little smooch at the Newport Carnival. If you want a little water closer to home, there's the backyard pool, whether it's as ambitious and pricey as this one would be, or the kind that you inflate and just put on the lawn with a little bit of water inside of it. Or out there at places like Coney Island, this is the Iron Steamboat landing at Dreamland Pier at Coney Island, setting you out on your voyage out onto the waves. And you see the crowds lined up there for that kind of expedition outside. The next boat leaves for New York in that many minutes. A little less, more domesticated. Here's a reflecting pond at Belle Isle Park in Detroit, Michigan, with people out there on their canoes and other watercraft. Picnic parks, something that were destinations for trolleys, like ran to different destinations in the Rochester area. This one is at Great Sodus Bay in New York. It's Willow Park there, and the Lakeshore Depot. In the era when I was growing up, men didn't cook, but if it was outside, that was fair game. Suddenly it was okay for the man to be the chef. So here you see a very manly looking plaid portable grill on the left-hand side and outdoor barbecue tools for the guy in your life on the right-hand side. Amusement parks. They are part of outdoor play. A part that, as a museum, we have a hard time collecting. I still think we should have a roller coaster atop the museum. We haven't added that as part of our expansion just yet, but we can look back at things like postcards and snapshots that capture the amusement park experience. So here's an exciting water ride, Shooting the Chutes at Coney Island in New York City on the right-hand side, especially dramatic after dark. The parks at Coney Island were the ultimate of their day. They were the Disneyland of their time. They were the destinations. They were so exciting, especially, again, after dark with all the electric lights turning on. They seemed like they took you to another world with colors, with lights. Very exotic feeling. Here's a San Francisco water ride, and that boat is getting a pretty good lift when it hits the pond there at the bottom in 1909. It says, "Hello, Mama, right soon. I'm having lots of fun on this vacation." Again, at Coney Island, this is the tickler that has you winding down your way, with any luck throwing you against your date so you can have a little slightly improper physical contact. Here's a very exciting looking roller coaster at Euclid Beach Park in Cleveland. The creaking that happens on a wooden roller coaster is very different from the smooth ride of the metal ones we have today. And at the World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago in 1893, here's the electrically lit White Tower of that park, one of its signature pieces of architecture. A little closer to home, here's Ontario Beach Park. So some remnants of this building are still there at Charlotte. And here's an amusement park ride that is no longer, the Virginia Reel, that is no longer visible in that part of the city. Part of the joy of going to big resorts like Coney Island or Atlantic City was to see and be seen, and to ogle the people of the opposite gender as you walked along that boardwalk, and you can see people finely dressed out there enjoying the sea air and the sight of all the other sightseers. But maybe your idea of fun in the sun is just relaxing in a hammock. I know that I grew up with kind of a scratchy wool hammock that was sort of felt like you were inside an enchilada. It kind of closed you up inside of it. It wasn't very airy or comfortable. It was more sweaty than pleasant in my memory. Or maybe outside means just going out for ice cream, something that is a tradition more than a century old and still gives us a thrill in cultures all over the world. Or perhaps a picnic is your thing, if not just ice cream. People are all having great time. I feel bad for that poor dog who looks very dejected looking at what he is not getting as part of this picnic. And we all know that vacations have their ups and downs. Here's a perfect example, a postcard from 1906 from Saco, Maine, from the Stong Museum's collection. It says, "Dear Flop, how are you, dead or alive? I don't know when we can ever get over. Everything is going wrong. I wish you'd come over. We planned to come over last Saturday, but of course something had to happen. Do come over soon, please. From the same as ever, Chub." So I like to envision what exactly was going wrong. Was it rainy weather? Was the kids were cranky? What was the in-laws had shown up unexpectedly? You name it. Summertime is not unalloyed bliss. It is something that has its ups and downs, as with the rest of life. So as you enjoy your next outdoor fun in the sun, whether that is at a tropical destination the next time you're out there, or whether it's sledding down a hill, or whether it's reminiscing about your own past fun in the sun, I hope that I have powered some new memories, whether it's you on the watery joys of a lake or a river, or whether it's you being the champion at croquet, and that you will get out there and enjoy the outdoor world of play sometime soon. Thank you. Questions, comments, stories? One in the back.
Thank you for your presentation. I have a question about the merry-go-round at Charlotte Beach.
Okay.
Involved in its demise. Now it's in China. I don't know, why wasn't it saved? Why wasn't it taken to the museum? What is the story behind it?
I don't know the full backstory on that. I know parts of it are in the collection of the Rochester Museum and Science Center. And we only have room for one merry-go-round at the Stong Museum, and ours is a one that was part of a carnival setup. So it's a smaller merry-go-round that fits inside our space better than a big outdoor merry-go-round would. So, sorry I can't fill you in more on that background.
I think it was about the Irondequoit Carousel. There was the Irondequoit Museum, the mall there in Irondequoit. That's the one that...
Got sold and taken overseas somewhere.
Yep.
Okay, I think that was... She'd asked about Charlotte.
Charlotte's
Still there.
Still there.
Right.
I think it's the two panels went
It's
to
the panels that
RMSC.
went to RMSC. Other questions? Comments? I will just follow up on what Don Riley said. The Stong Museum is definitely not just for kids or for grandparents and grandkids. I speak to lots of senior groups, and let me tell you that when they send field trips to the museum, we have to throw them out at the end of the day the same way we do the 7-year-olds because they're having so much fun. In fact, you may not be aware, in the summer we have this very deceitful thing called the Goodbye Parade. And at 4:45, you were asked to join in the Goodbye Parade. And we're going to give you maracas and flags, and we're going to march, and we're going to march, and we're going to march out the doors, and we're going to close those doors behind you. Because otherwise, people of every age would spend all day and all night. And in fact, when our grand opening occurs at the end of June this year for our expansion, we are expanding our hours, so we will be open till 8 on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday nights. So there'll be more time and space to play than ever before. and we hope you'll have reasons to come give us a whirl. We have grown-up only nights several times a year called Happiest Hour, where with adult beverages you get to play in the museum to your heart's delight. You don't have to feel guilty shoving a 6-year-old out of the way to run a cash register at our mini Wegmans supermarket. So it is a great sense of fun for people of all ages. Question over here.
You talked about expanding, raising money. Where are you going to expand? It seems like you haven't any more room.
We have done it. It is underway right now. Part of the way that we did it was rather than have a 500 space parking lot that occupied a lot of real estate, we have gone up. We have a 5-story parking garage. So that gave us space in addition to what we and our allied partners gained from filling in the inner loop. So that's allowing us to add 90,000 square feet that will open at the end of June to a building that's already 285,000
I thought you were
square feet.
getting onto what's already, which
We are. Yes.
I just want to figure out where are you going to add on?
It's adding on where the parking lot used to be, essentially.
Oh, in the back. Oh.
Yeah, so facing away from Martin Luther King Park
Oh.
is where the expansion is. Along a new street called Adventure Place, which is lined with about 250 apartments, all of which are fully occupied and in high demand. So come on down, lots has changed. You can see it now, you can see it after the expansion. It opens at the end of June. And thanks so much for having me here tonight, and I'll look forward to seeing some of you on other occasions. Oh, let me take off my technology.
Next month, our program is again quite different. We have Reverend Jackson, who was the gentleman that, let me try this again. He was the gentleman that was inspirational in getting the airport renamed for Frederick Douglass, and he also organized the moving of the Frederick Douglass Monument to a better place in Highland Park? Highland Park. So that'll be next month. March is going to be Ginny Ryan, who's going to talk about her career in broadcasting. So we got a few things going, but thank you very much for coming. A small crowd tonight, but I hope you enjoyed it.
You can learn more about the Strong Museum of Play by going to museumofplay.org.
Presented by the Greece Historical Society.
Want to learn more from the Greece Historical Society and Museum? Then click that subscribe button for more content and hit that bell icon to get notified
when there's new history content from the Greece Historical Society.
You can visit us on the web at greecehistoricalsociety.org. You can find us on Facebook at Greece Historical Society, and you can stop in at the Greece Historical Society at 595 Long Pond Road.